Hey guys, John V here from PhoneArena. You're watching our in-depth video review of the T-Mobile myTouch, not to be mistaken by the one manufactured by LG not too long ago. This one's actually made by Huawei. It's going to be available shortly for a tier contract of $49.99, so let's find out what it has to offer for the inexpensive price point. When you factor in its inexpensive price point, we gotta say we're very content with the styling of the Huawei-made T-Mobile myTouch. It doesn't come off cheap, and to tell you the truth, it's pretty solid. We like its choice of materials, mostly plastic. It has a nice, clean appearance thanks to its soft touch cover in the back. It has an accompanying weight, which gives it some added durability, and still more than compact enough to hold comfortably in one hand. Indeed, it's not spectacular when compared to some other displays out there, but what you get with the T-Mobile myTouch is a 4-inch WVGA LCD panel, so that's 480 by 800 pixels, which is sufficient enough for most things to make out fine text like this, but if you're in the web browser in a zoomed out view, it tends to look a little bit more on the garbled side. We definitely like the natural colors produced by the LCD panel, but it suffers from some poor viewing angles, tends to wash out, and a low contrast, which makes it almost unusable in outdoor conditions with the sun present. Mainly because there's sufficient spacing between the Android capacitive buttons and the bottom edge of the phone, we rarely found ourselves accidentally pressing them. So above the display you have an intricate looking earpiece and also a front-facing VGA camera. Towards the left edge of the phone we have the distinctive volume control, volume up, volume down, the raise, and they have really nice springy responses when pressed. Well, on the right side, the only thing we have here is just a dedicated shutter key. It's only a single level button, so you press it down and it snaps the shot. On the top edge, you have the 3.5mm headset jack, and you also have the dedicated power button. Again, it's raised and has a nice tactile response. Meanwhile, on the opposite side, we have the microphone. You have the micro USB port for charging and data connectivity. And finally, in the rear, we have the 5-megapixel autofocus camera. It's raised from the surrounding surface. It has a LED flash, the ability to shoot 720p videos. The notches next to it are for its internal speaker. And removing the back cover grants us access to its rather small 1500 mAh battery, SIM slot, and a micro SD card slot. Above all, the most disappointing aspect about the T-Mobile myTouch is the fact that it's running Android 2.3 Gingerbread out of box, as opposed to Ice Cream Sandwich at the very least that most devices are running nowadays. So you have the T-Mobile myTouch skin right on top of Gingerbread here, and you can tell it has those boxes around the icons here. It's not the best looking interface that we've seen. You can tell by the app panel, traditional scrollable view, nothing really different about it. Notifications panel, you gain access to some connectivity options right there, but at least you have all the great personalization aspects of Android that we love, but it doesn't really enhance the experience per se. Being an entry-level Android smartphone and all, the T-Mobile myTouch from Huawei is powered by a single-core 1.4 GHz processor, and it's coupled with 1 GB of RAM. So even with the live wallpaper here, something graphically intensive, it manages to maintain a really good responsive movement. Every now and then we see a subtle amount of choppiness. It's a little bit noticeable here with the app panel, but for other basic tasks it executes quite well with little issues at all. So for things like opening up apps, kinetic scrolling, pinch zooming, it maintains a decent response. With its 4-inch display, it takes a little bit of time getting adjusted trying to type up messages with its on-screen keyboard, especially if you've used devices with larger displays. Compared to those devices, the layout's rather cramped. We do like the responsive rate, but every now and then with predictive text and all, it tends to have a little bit of slowdown with it. Landscape options a lot better, of course, just more spaced out, and overall it definitely gets the job done. Just like the other myTouch devices, there is a dedicated Genius button. When you press that, it activates the application. It's powered by Nuance, so it's a basic voice recognition service here. You could do things like opening up applications, send text messages, and play a specific song just by saying it. Now, it's nice that it's accurate and works well, but it doesn't quite come off as being as comprehensive when compared to rival services out there, like what you find with Google now, or even some of the newer enhancements with Google Voice Search with Android 4.1 Jelly Bean. Load times aren't a problem with the T-Mobile myTouch thanks to its speedy HSPA Plus connection, but the issue that we have is just the extreme amount of jerkiness found with its operation, especially with flash-heavy sites here. It just tends to have a very slow movement, and it does stand out. There's nothing particularly different with the music player found with the T-Mobile myTouch. It's the familiar one that we find with stock Gingerbread here, so the presentation is very similar to any other device out there. Interestingly, its volume output's very strong with its rear speaker, but in the loudest volume setting, it tends to exhibit a little bit of sharpness. Unfortunately, there aren't any equalizer settings to better fine-tune its quality. Out of the box, the T-Mobile myTouch couldn't play videos encoded in DivX, XVID, or even H.264, but the one we have here is encoded in MPEG-4, 1280 by 720 resolution, so 720p, 1080p videos won't work, unfortunately. You can tell it's moving at a decent rate, nice visuals, but seeing that its display washes out, it doesn't give for the best experience out there, but it's more than adequate for the job. On the Huawei T-Mobile myTouch, you have a 5-megapixel camera in the rear, and its results are quite predictable for a basic entry-level smartphone. It's not the best out there. Details tend to be a little bit on the muddy side. Colors seem to be bland, and in low lighting conditions, you could kiss it goodbye just because there's a lot of noise in distorted colors. The LED flash is only effective up to 3 feet away. Anything more than that, it fails to illuminate it properly. Equally as heart-wrenching is the handset's 720p video recording quality, and that moves swiftly at 29 frames per second, but again, details are really lacking with its muddy appearance. Audio recording tends to be a little bit on the crackly side, and there's just a lot of artifacting going on when you're panning very quickly. Aside from the weak output from its earpiece, we're very happy with the overall calling quality just because the voices on both ends of the line were noise-free, distinctive, and clear. Switching over to the speakerphone, we were also presented with some strong volume tones, so it made conversations very easy on the ear. No issues whatsoever with the T-Mobile myTouch in regards to signal strength. It managed to maintain a good connection to the network. It didn't fluctuate during our time using it, nor did we experience any dropped calls. Nowadays, a 1500 mAh battery is regarded as very paltry, but with the T-Mobile myTouch, we're able to get at least a solid 1 day out of normal usage. It's still something you're going to require, that's going to require nightly charges, but nevertheless, at least you'll get by a solid workday with it. If you're not concerned about having the latest and greatest in the Android sphere, the T-Mobile myTouch from Huawei is a decent solution, especially for $49.99 with a 2-year contract. It's not that expensive at all, more than affordable in any budget, and it gets the job done with most things. Sure, it has an outdated Android 2.3 Gingerbread experience, but for people who aren't concerned about that, you still have all the lovable aspects of Android in the palm of your hands. So if you'd like to learn more about the T-Mobile myTouch, you can check out our website, guys, PhoneArena.com. This is John V. Thanks for watching.